Hello, and welcome to IMA's Inside Talk webinar series. The title of today's presentation is Getting Data Literacy Right, Where Do You Start? Sponsored by Oracle NetSuite. I'm Terry Marmile, and I'll be your host for today's Inside Talk webinar. I want to cover a couple of reminders before we get started. Please use the Q&A window on the right side of your screen to send questions to the presenters or to request technical assistance. Keep in mind that refreshing your browser will correct most connection issues. In order to earn CPE credit today, you must participate completely in the live webinar by logging in on time and responding to the poll questions. Oracle NetSuite Global Business Unit pioneered the cloud computing revolution in 1998, establishing the world's first company dedicated to delivering business applications over the internet. Today, Oracle NetSuite Global Business Unit provides a suite of cloud-based financials, enterprise resource planning, ERP, HR, and omnichannel commerce software that runs on the business of companies in more than 217 countries. NetSuite has been a supportive partner of IMA for over 10 years, and they pride themselves in meeting the evolving business requirements of companies of all sizes at every stage of growth. We appreciate and thank them for their partnership and ongoing support. For more information, please visit www.netsuite.com. It's a pleasure to have Brad Hamilton as part of our program, and he will be serving as moderator for today's event. Brad Hamilton has been a member of IMA since the early 1990s. He is a CPA and a CMA and retired in May 2021 after a 38-year career working as an accountant in industry, and the past 32 of which as a controller of various businesses. Brad currently serves as a member of the IMA Global Board Technology Solutions and Practices Committee. In addition, he is currently serving as the IMA Lincoln Trail Regional Council, LTRC, President, a position he has held on 2 separate occasions in the past. Brad has served as an IMA officer in numerous roles the past 25 years in 2 IMA chapters as well as the LTRC, including 2 terms each as president of the 2 respective chapters. Hi, Brad. Welcome to our program.
Thank you, Terry. I'm pleased to be a part of the Inside Talk webinar series, and on behalf of IMA, I want to welcome everyone to today's session. At this time, I'd like to introduce our featured presenter for today's program. With us today, we have Rosemary Amato. Rosemary is a CMA who has spent a large portion of her career focused on the IT areas that affect management accountants. She is not only a member of the Global Board Technology Solutions and Practices Committee, but also she sits on the Sustainability Business Management Task Force, as well as the Committee for Academic Relations, and is a former Global IMA board member. She's been an IMA member since 1976 and is currently a member of the London chapter. To learn more about Rosemary, please take a look at the speaker bio section of your console. It's great to have you with us, Rosemary.
Thank you, Brad. It's great to be here today, and I'm pleased to be able to discuss this important topic with you and all of our attendees.
All right. So before we start, we'll take a look at the learning objectives for today's program. After participating in this webinar, you will be able to explain what data governance is all about. You should also be able to recognize the need for quick wins in a data strategy project. And finally, you will be able to identify potential watch out and warning signals when you are in the midst of a data implementation. We're looking forward to an informative presentation, so at this time I'm going to turn it back over to Rosemary to begin.
Thanks again, Brad. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I believe we have a lot of attendees from all over the world today. So I'm very excited to be with you to share an interesting topic, data literacy. This topic is nothing new, but people's awareness of data and how it should, or more importantly, should not be used, has been gaining attention in the world, especially in the last few years when we were inundated with data while experiencing COVID lockdowns. Data has disrupted the financial sector. Data has disrupted many industries, and data has disrupted our lives. I'm currently living in Malta, but I still often visit my old home in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. And when the government changed the speed limit on the highways in the Netherlands to no more than 100 kilometers an hour, about 62 miles per hour, during the hours of 6 a.m. to 7 p.m., as a result of the data they collected, saying it would help lower CO2 emissions, what happened? Travel times increased. Did they really have all the data they needed to make a conscious decision on the impact to the individuals who were doing the driving? I think not. Social media is bombarding us with data, and almost every app you have can send you notifications. I have shut off all notifications because I made the conscious decision to get data only when I want to get data. So as the agenda shows, I will cover not only the fundamentals of data literacy, but share with you two different data journeys that I experienced with two different companies in two different industries. We'll then talk about data governance within the scope of a data management framework. And I also share with you my conclusions about the journeys and then leave you with some key takeaways. You too can become data literate if you aren't already. And remember, it is not the data that is important. It is the insights that we learn from the data that is key. Sharing those insights with your stakeholders makes you a more valued member of your organization. So let's get started. The fundamentals of data literacy. Very simple. You always have to start at the beginning and define what data means to you. Today I'll be talking about the data a company has. Whether you work for a professional services firm or a company in any industry, in financial services, a not-for-profit, or your own entrepreneurship, you have fundamental data requirements. Do you know where your data is? Do you know how to access it? Do you know what comprises your data? Do you know why it is important to you? Do you know how data gets into your company, moves through your company, and leaves your company? This last item has a great name linked to it now. They call that data lineage. Data lineage is a key component. How does your data move through your company? But I also believe answering the question why it moves through your company is even more important. There are costs associated with data, but I'm not going to get into that topic today. One of my ISACA colleagues, Ramsey Gallego, he preaches around the world on what happens when quantum computing arrives. And quantum computing will absolutely change data as we know it today and how we process it today. But that will also be a topic for another discussion in the future. So being data literate is something all CMAs, all accountants, and I can really say any individual needs to understand. There are many models available to use. The DCAM model may be one that you're familiar with. This is the model that the EDM Council promotes. And many of you on the call, your companies are probably members of the EDM Council. You can find the complete list on their website, but it includes most of the big four, Johnson & Johnson, Caterpillar, a lot of the banks, and literally companies throughout the world. The EDM Council is the global association created to elevate the practice of data management as a business and operational priority. The Council is the leading advocate for the development and implementation of data standards, best practices, and comprehensive training and certification programs. And it's been around since 2005. You can check out the model in more detail via the links I have provided. But today, I'm going to be focusing on number 6, data governance. Every company develops their own data culture. Who is going to be making decisions on data? And that data culture drives the need for data governance. One thing we must always remember, however, is that regulations will be continued to be forced upon us, and we need to use data to combat them. My first data project started in 1997 when I joined a Big Four to work on a global SAP implementation. But before you hear about that, I think it's time for a poll question. Over to you, Brad.
All right, thank you. Attendees should see the first polling question now open on your screen. If you cannot see the poll question, please refresh your browser, which should correct the issue. I would like to remind all participants that you may begin responding to each question as soon as it appears on your screen. Our first polling question is data governance a component of a data management framework? Answer A, I don't understand what data governance is, but I want to learn more. Answer B, no, it is not a required component. And answer C, it is a component that needs to be addressed in every company. Please note that after selecting an answer, you must click the Submit button, which is located on the right side of your screen just below the response options, in order to successfully record your answer. And looks like we've had a pretty good response so far, Rosemary. Turn it back over to you if we want to either wait another second here or possibly go ahead and look at the results.
Okay, it looks like we've got about 95, 96% in. So interesting. 83% selected yes. It is a component that needs to be addressed in every company. So I think we have a lot of data literate people with us already today. Yep. But hopefully you'll learn some more things about what I'm going to share with you. And for those that answered A or B, and it looks like that's a total of about 16%, hopefully you'll learn a lot more today. So as I mentioned before the polling question, my first project was where I spent 2 years helping a client consolidate 35 different systems into one global SAP system. They had bought companies throughout the years, but never integrated their systems. So the focus of this project was to get data into the new system and figure out the differences that existed in the data in each of the 35 systems so that only one set of data would move to the new system. Understanding the need for data availability was important. In creating the vendor database in the new SAP, the purchasing agents needed to rely on the vendor master being accurate with the supplier details readily available. But how do you determine who the supplier is when each system had a different name, had a different identifier for the same supplier? A lot of time was spent on data cleansing so that it could be migrated into the new system. I worked on the security, configuration, and business process controls during that project. and I was aware of the data challenges, but not directly involved. However, I did get directly involved with data when I took over another project 12 years later. When I took over this project called Global Client Intelligence, it had been running for 5 years. The goal of the project was to take data that was maintained in different member firms' systems and consolidate it for global visibility of client performance. So this was an internal project at one of the Big Four. Excel spreadsheets and PDFs had been created over the first 5 years of the project, and they were published monthly to more than 3,000 employees, 3,000 PDFs and Excels to the internal management team. But we still didn't have 100% participation from the network of member firms to supply the data on a regular daily and monthly basis. All of these reports were being distributed via email, and often those emails went astray and people would complain, "We never got our data this month." So I was made the program director. We were mandated to get the data into the hands of the end user and to stop using email and stop sending PDFs and Excels. We did not have time to focus on the data itself. We needed a quick win to show the leaders what was possible. So instead of going through an in-depth review of the user's requirements and then mapping data and cleansing it, we decided to move forward with the data we already had. We also made the decision to get a new solution up and running as quickly as possible and shut down the existing solution of PDFs and Excels. A quick vendor selection review ensued, and we selected QlikView as it was the leading data visualization solution at the time. This was in 2012, when data visualization solutions were just starting to appear on the market. We knew what data had appeared in the PDFs and Excels, and that is the data we used to create a new database. We focused on getting buy-in from the member firms to deliver their data on a timely basis. And then we made the decision to stop the PDFs and Excels after the second month of going live with QlikView. When we put the new solution into the hands of the end user, we immediately started getting feedback. Much of the feedback was positive because users were able to drill down, slice the data any way they wanted by any filter, but there was also a lot of negative feedback. Why is this member firm missing? Where did this number come from? Where is the client's latest billing hours? This number isn't what we are seeing on other reports. As we researched the questions every month, we found areas that needed to be fixed, not in the solution, but in the way we captured data and ran our business. We were then able to refine the solution, make recommendations for improvements in business processes, and most importantly, get the remaining member firms to participate. By year 2, we had a robust solution in place that was able to provide management with the visibility of data worldwide, something the firm never had before, and this provided insights into how we managed our clients. From a data literacy, a data governance perspective, we had started by asking the steering committee for the program for their support to just use the data we had available. So it's time for another poll. Back to you, Brad.
Thank you, Rosemary. Attendees should see the second polling question now open on your screen. If you cannot see the poll question, as we said earlier, please refresh your browser which should correct the issue. I would like to remind all participants that you may go ahead and begin responding to each question as soon as it appears on the screen. Our second polling question is, are you involved in your company's data journey? Answer A is no, not part of the team working on data governance. B, part of the team working on data governance. Or C, my company has no activities going on with data governance. Please be sure to click the submit button, which is located on the right side of your screen just below the response options, in order to successfully record your answer. And we'll see how we're coming along. We've got about 94% responses. I'm hoping here, Rosemary, that we'll, based on that first poll question, we'll see quite a few respond in the yes category, but it will be interesting. So I'll turn it back over to you.
I would hope they respond in yes, but I think we got about 96% in. Let's share the results. And this is interesting. We've got almost a perfect split. 43% of you are saying no, you're not part of a team working on data governance. 46% yes, and 11% company has no activities going on with data governance. So I hope by the time we get to the end of this session today, those of you that answered, my company has no activities going on with data governance, will be reaching out to the leaders in your company to learn more about maybe why they should be starting to be focused on that. And the other two groups, let's talk, we'll be talking a little bit about why management accountants, CMAs, should actually be involved. Okay, so let me give you the second case study. This example is from a large bank. They started with developing their data strategy. It's probably common knowledge to those of you that work in the area of financial services that the industry is heavily regulated. So the need for data and understanding data, a lot of it is driven by regulations. Regulations such as Basel IV, PCI reporting, MiFID II, and so on. In 2019, McKinsey & Company issued its Global Banking Annual Review, noting that investor confidence in banks was weakening. Banks wanted to show they were in control, and data lineage, there's that term again, became their approach to demonstrate this. Data lineage solutions have popped up everywhere. Many vendors offer products in this area. What they do is they help a company map each piece of data by showing where it goes, how it's used, how it's created, and its journey to the final report that may end up going to a regulatory agency. The bank under discussion had established its data strategy and focused on data management governance. The data management process started by gaining an understanding of how data flowed through the bank. They created processes not only to address how it governed data, but also proceeded to start documenting every definition of data it needed to meet their reporting requirements. The amount of work required to create these data definitions and data lineage flows was tremendous. I was part of their program for approximately 14 months. And during that time, the bank only developed one report. The end users were still requesting additional reports, and the team that I was a part of would help the end users define what they were needed by asking the question why and trying to get their answers. But the work to create data definitions and data lineage documents superseded everything else. The actual collection of data and creation of standard reports did occur, but it took a back seat to the bank's focus on internal policies creation and not focused on getting data into the hands of the end user. So where does data governance come into play? Data governance is absolutely required. A business must take accountability for the valuation of its information. An effective information management governance model must be defined and effectively embedded in the organization and maintained periodically. That is the only way you will know what data needs to be managed in your company. The bank defined data management as the development and execution of plans, policies, practices, and projects that acquire, control, protect, deliver, and enhance the value of data. Interesting that that statement doesn't mention the management of the data itself. Many people use the terms data management and data governance interchangeably. These two actions have very different meanings and goals. I like the definition that the University of Alabama has made when they are promoting their Master of Science in Management Information Systems program. They say, many professionals get these two terms confused, often using them as synonyms rather than as two separately functioning capabilities. One of the major differences between these two business functions is that data governance is a strategy, while data management is a practice. This means that in addition to creating a comprehensive data governance framework for the organization, business leaders must determine what data management practices they will use to meet their goals. In addition, data governance is not controlled by technology, but data management is. Instead, businesses use technologies to support the major objectives and goals set forth by data governance plans. Finally, it's important to understand that data governance and management work alongside one another. A business operating at high functionality will not utilize one or the other. It will use both practices simultaneously and harmoniously. Time for another poll, Brad.
Thank you, Rosemary. Attendees may respond to the poll question immediately, as we've mentioned before. Our third polling question is, does your company have data governance and data management policies in place? Answer A, data governance only. Answer B, data management only. Answer C, data governance and data management. Answer D, we are just starting our data journey. Or answer E, we have no plans to put data governance and/or data management in place. Please take a moment to submit your answer and then click the submit button on the right, just below the response options. Let's see how we're doing. We'll give a little bit more time here for everybody to respond. I was thinking back on the last poll question as you were talking, Rosemary, and I'm wondering if maybe this is a new enough topic in terms of businesses adopting it that perhaps the reason our response was mixed between yes and no is because they're just not involving their finance teams early on, perhaps.
And that's going to be interesting to see with the results, and I'll comment on that in just a second, Brad, but it looks like we've got about 96% in, so I'm really curious now about seeing the results. Wow, okay. 55% say data governance and data management. 4% data governance only, 9% data management only, about 24% starting your journey, and about 8% no plans to put in place. So the 8% sort of ties into the 11% we had earlier, where they weren't involved in this area. But it's really good to see that 55% number, that data governance and data management policies are in place. And if you remember from that DCAM framework I showed you at the beginning, data governance and data management are both areas within the framework. So I'm going to share some conclusions with you. We're then going to have a poll question, and then we're going to go into some more takeaways in detail. So let me talk a little bit about my conclusions after having been on those two projects. Both companies became data literate, even though they started at different ends of the data model. Both companies were determined to understand their data and make it available to their end users in a digital format. So many different paths will lead to a successful journey on the path to data literacy. However, you must start the journey. And based on my experiences, my recommendation, and this is me talking for myself, no one else, I always recommend opting for a quick win. When you can show the users of the data what they can do with it, what insights can be provided, you will get their support. You will help them start a data culture into your organization when you actually can show them what can be delivered. And as accountants, we've worked with data an awful lot. We've worked with balance sheets, P&Ls, cash flow statements. But to us, those were just the numbers. If you start thinking about those components, that those are really data elements that mean something to your company, and then you add those financial areas to new data elements that may be coming, such as those that may be required for ESG reporting, CRSD in Europe, and other regulations that may be happening. I was involved in another project for the last 2 years that dealt with the medical device regulations. And it was data, data, data on how do you make sure you've got the data that needs to be input into an EU system that was being built to capture understanding of what happens with medical devices. So you can achieve data governance as long as you just start. There are many frameworks available, and the picture that you're seeing right now is one I just Googled, and there's many, many, many besides DCAM. But you need to start working with your data and asking the question, why is it needed? Who needs insights? So we have another poll question, Brad.
Thank you, Rosemary. Again, I'll remind our participants that you can begin answering the question, and if you cannot see it, please refresh your browser. Our fourth polling question is, did you gain enough information today about how you can become data literate? A, yes, I'm ready to promote data literacy in my company. B, no, I want more and want to continue learning about data literacy. Or C, enough for now, I understand the basics. Please be sure to click the submit button, which is located on the right side of your screen, just below the response options in order to successfully record your answer. See how we're doing here. Still got a little bit of time. I considered myself somewhat literate, but I've learned a lot more today, Rosemary. So I'm encouraged, and I hope that the audience is going to bear that out as well.
Well, that's good to hear, Brad. And I think the phrase data literacy often scares a lot of people, but as accountants, we're already data literate. But it's where do we go with it, and how do we embed a data culture in our company? Mm-hmm. Let's give them another couple seconds. We're at about 90% right now, so I think a few people are still thinking about how to answer this question.
An interesting side note related to data governance, not as serious as regarding businesses, but I coach high school basketball, sort of a hobby at this point. I've done it for 26 years. And one of the things we rely upon when we're scouting opponents is statistics. And the interesting thing about it is that you can have all the statistics in the world nowadays at your fingertips, but they don't always tell the full story. And so I really think, another aspect of tying that back to your presentation, data governance not only becomes important from a security and protection standpoint, but really a data interpretation standpoint as well, because the wrong data in the wrong hands with the wrong interpretation can certainly, jeopardize your business.
Absolutely. And in understanding where your data is coming from and where it's going in your business is absolutely a key part of data literacy. We're up at 94, so I'm going to go ahead and share the results. 53% said they now understand the basics. Good. But I want to address those that are ready to promote data literacy in their company, 34%, and especially that 13% of those who want to learn more and continue learning. Because I think anything to do with data is something that will be with us now, because as you just mentioned, Brad, data is so easy to get. It's what do you do with it, and how do you know it's accurate? So let me share some of my key takeaways with you right now. So your involvement is absolutely key to success. Remember that in your role as a management accountant or as an internal auditor, external auditor, whatever your role is as a CMA or as a member of our organization, you play an integral role in setting the data strategy and determining how data governance is handled in your company. And that's whether you know it or not. One of my very first jobs in accounting, I was working in the capital accounting area, where I was just focused on the assets that belonged to a manufacturing company. Those assets were capital assets of buildings. They manufactured motors. It was all the equipment for the manufacturing. And I was responsible to make sure that as something was purchased, it was capitalized, depreciated, recorded properly. Was it a leasehold? Was it a purchase? And my controlling that data was data governance. I never thought about it back then, but today I look back on those experiences I had in capital accounting in payroll accounting, in all the other areas, I was handling data and responsible for how that data was managed. So get involved early. Help determine the data that you need to manage. Help determine the data that maybe your department needs to manage, and especially what data is important to your company. Become data literate and help your organization develop a data strategy that delivers successful results and insights. Just reporting historical facts is not sufficient. It is important. That data is important, but insights on what the data means, that will benefit your company and benefit your stakeholders. Don't get bogged down in a project. Just start working with the data you have available. There are many digital solutions that can help you get data into the hands of those who need it, but don't let IT drive how you're going to be tackling data governance and data management. So I think it's time for questions and answers. Thank you.
Thanks, Rosemary. Attendees should see the evaluation survey, I believe, or maybe that's after the Q&A. I'm not sure. Hopefully you see the evaluation survey now on your screen. If it did not open, please click the evaluation survey icon at the bottom of your screen for access. We appreciate your feedback, so please complete this survey while we address some of the audience questions, and we've had a number of really good ones submitted, which I'll get to here in just a moment. But I want to remind all the participants to send us your questions and comments by typing them into the Q&A panel on the right side of your screen. So, got some good ones here. First of all, one question that I thought was interesting is, if IT is currently taking the lead on data governance, how would you advise getting other functions involved, Rosemary?
That is a very, very interesting question, because from my experiences, I've seen a lot of companies get into trouble when IT is leading data governance. If you look at the framework, the foundations of the framework that I mentioned, the DCAM, start with data strategy and business case, and then move into data management, program, and funding. If the data strategy and business case is being driven by IT, that says the business is not driving the business case. And just throwing a technology solution at something, you are heading towards failure. That's my perspective. But unless that IT organization has really, really connected to what the business wants, you've got to really get involved with them to understand what are they doing and why are they doing it. Throwing technology at something is not the solution. It's going to help in the future, but if you don't know why you're doing it, and if the business case and the data strategy for the business case is not there, IT will not help it.
All right, another good question here for you. How do you manage frequent reorganizations in terms of data management and data governance?
That can be a challenge, but it also depends on what is happening with the reorg. In my past experiences, I was with the company for 20 years. Every 3 years, almost like clockwork, there was a reorg. But did the data really change? The underlying data stayed the same. How it was being reported, to who it was being reported, that's what changed. And with the reorg, we often had many questions that they needed data that maybe we had not captured or not had reported. They wanted it reported in a new way versus how it was reported in the old way. So if your underlying data is in place, you know how to manage it. If you remember the chart I had at the beginning, how you create it, how you transform it, how you use it, the only challenge you should have then when there's a reorg is you're going to be using it maybe differently. The data is still the data.
Are there any standard templates or procedures by industry that can be leveraged by companies in order to gather, store, process, and dispose of data? And then the same participant asked the question, why is there so much ambiguity?
I'm not sure what they may be addressing with ambiguity, but they may be looking at what's happening in the past few years of everyone just talking about data right now. It's in the forefront of everything you see. Everyone is pushing data solutions, but you need to look first, as I said, what is your data strategy and what do you need for your data? An example, if you're processing credit cards, you're going to have to follow the PCI standards. That's a regulation. You have already captured the data because you're processing credit cards. So when you look at the regulation, what do you need to keep? When can you get rid of the data? So that's going to drive any technology you're going to be using on how long do you keep it, what is record retention, who it can be given to, how do you dispose of it. So there's a link there that I think can solve the ambiguity question is what is driving the focus on the data? Is it a regulation? Is it for tax purposes? Is it for your external auditors? You need to understand that first, and that then would lay out not only going from your data strategy down into then your data governance on who is going to manage it, and that should help clarify, I think, and make things a lot clearer to everyone. Hopefully that sort of answered the question.
Okay. One participant has asked, how should a small business like a sole proprietorship or a small LLC address data governance and management?
That I would think should be relatively easy because for an entrepreneurship or a small company, you should pretty much know what the data is that you're capturing, that you're creating, that you're transforming, and why you have that data. You know, so it's documenting that can be as simple as doing it in Excel or using Microsoft Access. You don't need anything extensive, but having, say, your own little data lineage solution that says we capture our customer data according to our record retention policy in the state or the country we live in. We keep it for X years. And it's going through and documenting your strategy on what to do with the data, how you handle it, go through how you use it for collaboration, and, you know, take one of the frameworks that are out there and just, you know, look at your data in simple terms. Don't overcomplicate it. This is nothing big and monstrous. It is if you're a big company, but for a small company, you should know what your data is and what you do with it.
So sort of piggybacking on that, appreciate the answer. If they're a startup company in particular, should they, focus on data governance and data management right from the beginning? And is there, a simple step or a focus area where they should start?
Absolutely. And I think what happens a lot with startup companies is they get stuck with regulations. As the entrepreneurs are looking at a startup, it's really understanding the industry that you're going into and what regulations are going to drive your data, and putting it in place at the beginning. And you can do it very simply, but making sure that you consider that as you continue growing and add to it as you grow. So you can look at it on how do you develop a data domain? What is the data you're talking about? What are you going to do with it? So you're asking why, how you're going to use it, identifying who your stakeholders are. And that will naturally evolve, especially for startups, because where you start with, you usually don't end up there.
Awesome. Thank you. This one's not a question, but I wanted to share from one of our participants' input that for their own company, it's an important topic because of the outgrowth of cyber security issues. And they said having data management and data governance in place helps my company maintain good records and reduce potential risks. So that was a good input there. This
Absolutely.
is a really good question for you from your final or one of your messages in the conclusion. Can you elaborate on going for a quick win and not getting bogged down in the requirements elicitation process?
Sure. I think a lot of the things you may be reading out there is about how you bring user experiences into a design process, especially when you need to share data with people. We had talked about that in that first project I discussed, and we said, we don't have time. We don't have time to go interview all our users to ask them, what do you want? Do you want something that you can drill down to? Do you want something to use on your mobile phone? Do you want to use it on a PC or tablet instead? So we took the core team and said, to the best of our ability, we are going to work with the data we've got, with the software vendor we selected, and just get something up and running. A lot of people can't visualize things. So it's a quick win is putting something actually in their hands where they can touch and feel it. And when we did that with ClickView, all of a sudden they're like, I can press a button and I see the total for the week. I press another button, oh, there's the month. Oh, I can press another button and, oh, there it is by person. And that's then what would get them thinking, what do they really need? So you can spend a lot of time documenting requirements, getting input. It's easier to just start. A lot of people also call that agile, but it's you just start doing things and make sure what you're doing, what you're using can be scaled, can be changed easily, and having that quick win gives the people the ability to say, we've got something, we're using our data, and then you can improve it.
Are you seeing artificial intelligence influence data governance and data management?
I personally have not been involved in AI activities, but I think a lot of companies, especially those in the tech space, are trying to see how data can be, I'll use the word, inquired upon based on AI activities. So right now we're used to, you've got a database that you can, go in and say, I want X. With AI, it's developing different algorithms that you might not have thought of. So I think it's something we need to keep our eye on for the future, how it's going to impact us. Look at how Bing has changed, how Google has changed. All that has evolved. The data they have is still the data. How it's getting searched is evolving based on people using it. So AI is definitely something to think about.
Okay, this will be we've got time for one more question, so this will be the last question.
Okay.
How can I convince my company to implement data governance?
Well, to answer that question, I would really need to know what industry and what type of company it is. Companies that are driven by compliance and regulation, if they're not working on data governance, they're going to get fined. They're going to have a problem. Their stakeholders are going to come after them. If it's a company that they believe they've got very simple data, maybe data governance is not that important right now. But if they want to grow in the future, it could be a problem. I had one experience I'll share with you real quickly where a company was looking to be bought out. But during the due diligence process, and I worked as part of the due diligence team, during investigation, they found that some of the data being reported for the receivables was inaccurate. The owner of the company thought everything was fine, but now it's going to affect the selling price. So data governance becomes important when there's a need, and it's learning what is the need for that particular company and the particular industry they're in.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. I appreciate it. I'm going to turn the audience's attention back to our host now, Terry.
Thank you, Brad.
I'd like to thank our presenter, Rosemary Amato, for sharing her knowledge and expertise with us. We're very appreciative that she has made time for IMA and our audience today. I want to thank again Oracle NetSuite for sponsoring today's webinar, and thank all of you for your participation in today's webinar. If you have met the requirements of CPE credit, you can access or save your certificate of completion today by selecting the CPE icon on the bottom of your console before the webinar concludes, or select the CPE credit link on the right side of your post-event thank you email that you will receive later today. Finally, your CPE credit will be automatically entered into your member transcript. I look forward to spending time with you again when we'll enjoy some more Inside Talk.